straight, white Christian.
No, Jesse, this is the subscribe thing.
Oh, yeah. I need you all to subscribe, support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook, and follow me on Twitter.
Got it.
I want to go to my guest. I have with me Mark Collett. He is a British political activist and the author of The Fall of Western Man. The Fall of Western Man. Mark, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
I hear that you raise a lot of hell over there in Great Britain. What are you doing?
Well, I try to talk about issues that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And it was quite interesting. In your intro, I've listened to a little bit of your stuff, but in your intro, you talked about rebuilding the family by rebuilding the man. And something I talk about extensively in my book is the way that the family unit, which is the cornerstone of our society, the very bedrock of our civilization, is constantly under attack by liberals and Marxists and those who want to sow the seeds of division and create chaos in the Western world.
And you're right about that. Why are white men, white, straight, conservative, Christian men, why are they giving into it, and why have they given into it in the past?
Well, the problem we've got here in the West is we've got such a pervasive media, and the media it started with a drip feed, like drip, drip, drip on a stone, and then it became a flow, and now it's a complete torrent. And this is a torrent of degeneracy. It pushes all the wrong morals within our society. So instead of having a moral, traditional society that values the family, that values relationship, that values going and working for a living or being a great homemaker and mother. We value hedonism, we value materialism, and we think things like abortion are just normal, they're just acceptable. We've let feminism into our society, and all of these things have broken down the family unit. They've attacked the traditional family, and they've tore it asunder. But this isn't something that's just happened overnight. It's taken decades to happen. And those who have pushed this have done it carefully and methodically by warping our minds.
Did men see this happening a long time ago? Did they see that this drip, drip, drip was happening and refuse to stop it?
I think it's, the way I would put this is it's a little bit like boiling a frog. If you throw a frog into a pan of boiling hot water, it'll jump out. Straight away, it'll jump out. It'll know there's something wrong. It will panic. But with this media onslaught, because it's been such a carefully introduced influence into our society, it's like placing a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly turning up the heat so people don't notice. Now, let's just take a few examples here. In my book, I talked about the music and antics of artists. I say artists in inverted commas, like Lady Gaga. Now, the things they push today might be slightly controversial. It might turn a few heads, but if that had been introduced in, say, the 1950s or 1960s, it would have been completely outrageous and no one would have stood for it.
Right.
And it's been a slow slide towards this degeneracy. And every time liberals, Marxists, the radical left get to a point where something that wasn't previously acceptable is now acceptable, they then seek to push the limits even further. And by slowly pushing the envelope of degeneracy, they have made things more and more acceptable. They have pushed our limits of tolerance, and they have managed to introduce poison into our society, which has really altered the way our brains work. And I don't just mean what we see on TV. I mean what's pushed by the music industry, the bad role models in the music industry. I mean the porn industry and the way that's been normalized. This isn't just a backstreet industry anymore. This is something that attacks the family. It undermines the family unit, yet it's mainstream. These people are on TV. These people are seen now almost as role models in themselves. And really, a woman that has hundreds and hundreds of partners over her lifetime and performs sex acts on camera, I don't see how she can be a role model.
Yeah.
That isn't something that's good for young girls. And it's the same for young boys. The kind of men that young boys look up to, they're not inventors, they're not pioneers, they're not explorers. They're usually people who are involved with negatives, whether that's drugs, whether that's alcohol, whether they're people who cheat on their partners. And all of these things are implanting the wrong moral seeds in our children's minds. And unfortunately, those children then grow up and they have no moral compass. And all of this is a carefully orchestrated attack on our once moral and traditional society.
How old are you, Mark?
I'm 37.
I've noticed that in this country, over in America here, and white men and women are not having children. They have a low birth rate. Why is that? Why is it that they're not having babies? Because if they don't have babies, after a while they will become the minority. And once they become the minority, it's over for white people.
Well, that's a complicated question. As I said earlier, materialism and hedonism play a major role in this. We're constantly told, don't have children, don't worry about the future, don't do anything for your future, enjoy the now, live for the moment. And all of these messages are very, very divisive and destructive, because if people just live for materialism and hedonism, they think children are too expensive, children are a burden. They want to spend money on holidays, fast cars. They live for the moment. And that often means they get in debt, they take out credit cards, they get embroiled with different loans, and then they can't afford children. And that's a really suicidal notion. But there's also been the rise of feminism. And feminism, again, is an attack on the family unit. Men and women form complementary pairs. We work well together, and the units we form are more than the sum of their respective parts. A man and woman together can achieve far more than they would achieve on their own.
But my thing, Mark, is that if men were strong, if men were men, they wouldn't allow this to happen. Just because the media, the liberals are promoting it, if men were men, the men will have self-control, self-contained, and the women will follow, and these things would not be happening. Why are the men so weak?
The men are weak because they've been emasculated. They've been taught to be weak.
Is that being taught in the homes or outside the home?
In the schools, the media. I mean, when I went to school, we were taught to be strong. I mean, this would seem absurd by today's standard, but we would go to school and we would play sports outside all year in shorts. If we went on to the games field, we were told we had to wear shorts. You wore shorts whether it was sunny, whether it was raining, whether it was snowing. And if any of the little boys wimped out on this, the other little boys would mock them, the teachers would mock them, they'd tell them off, and you were made to be strong.
Let me take a quick break. Mark, you tweeted out you shared a photo on Twitter of a homemade daddy sticker chart. And in this chart, it bribed men to wash dishes, put the toilet seat down, change diapers, bathe the kids, pack the kids' lunches, and the women promises beer, no nagging for a week, naked dances, sex, get out of the doghouse free card. Is this real or is this made up?
Well, I was led to believe it's real. It looks real. And the thing that bothered me about it was the way it infantilizes I mispronounced that. It makes the man like an infant. It treats a man like a child. And that's my big issue with it. And it goes back to what we were saying before the break, how young boys used to be treated like little men.
Yeah.
And the idea of them being strong and courageous and masculine was good. When we used to play out, it was something of pride. Which child would climb the tree first? Which child would jump over the river first? Who would try the rope swing or, go down the hill on their bike the fastest. And it was all about taking risks, being a man. But now these little boys are wrapped in cotton wool. They're emasculated. No one's a winner either. Have you noticed that? That everyone has to get a medal for participation. When we were at school, it was a constant battle, a battle to be picked for the football team, a battle to ensure you were in one of the teams for sports day, that you won your race. We even battled in the classroom. You would win awards or prizes for doing well in academic studies. And it was all a competition. It bred into or fed into the idea that men should be competitive and strong and masculine and seek to be the best. But we've lost all that.
Yeah.
Children are wrapped in cotton wool. They don't play outside like they used to. They're scared of everything. And one of the worst things is, with the rise of the single parent family, when there's no father figure in the home, young men don't have that masculine influence. Their primary role model is in fact their mother. So they grow up with feminine attributes rather than with male attributes. And that's really worrying.
And so the reason that a man would give into this daddy stickers chart, it would be because he was raised by a single mother, and so he grew up a weak boy and became a weak man. And so when he does get married, he just give into this because he's already weak. Is that right?
Well, yeah, that can be one reason. I mean, not all single mothers raise their sons to be weak, but it is a contributing factor. And there might be many reasons why this man has been so weak. It might be schooling, it might be the media, it might be the people he hung around with, it might be because he comes from a single parent family and had no decent masculine role model in his life. But for whatever reason, he is a beta male. He is someone who is not the head of his own house. And that presents a problem, because how are his children going to look up to him for discipline and order when he's being bossed around like he's one of the children? And that to me is just absurd, because I look up to my father, and he was the breadwinner. He was the head of the house. He came home. My mum was a homemaker. She had the tea on the table. He came in from work, and we sat around the table as a family. And that's something that will always live with me. And it was one of the ways that helped to impart morality and discipline into me as a child. And I grew up, I wanted to get a job. I wanted to be part of a productive society. But most importantly, I wanted to be a strong man. To this day, I'm involved in masculine pursuits. And I think all men should be.
Yeah. Even in, at one point in my life, I was a weak, liberal, democratic kind of a person. But I wasn't that weak where I would follow a chart like that. It was just so much I would allow to happen. And it seemed as though men have gone beyond even that, because I can't even imagine a man submitting to that degree to a woman.
Well, neither can I, but you see this sort of craven desperation from men, and some men actually believe that women are sort of turned on or attracted to a doormat, but they're not. Women are quite interesting creatures, and you'll tend to find that they'll always say that they want to tame a man, but they actually don't. They want a man to tame them. They want a man who's strong.
Yeah.
They don't want a rude man or a crude man or a man that mistreats them, but they want a man that's strong. They want a man who's a protector, who's a provider. But most crucially, women look for men who can look after their children and protect their children and be someone that essentially provides for the entire family unit and gives discipline and order to their children and helps to bring them up and nurture them. That's what women are looking for. And when men present themselves as doormats like that, men might think that the women will like it. And some women might even initially think they will like it, but eventually they don't. And that's why so many women are cheating on these weak males and running off with other men, because ultimately, they're not satisfied by craven doormats. Deep inside their very being, and it's an evolutionary thing. These people, we've evolved for tens and tens of thousands of years, and women have learned on a deep genetic level to look for the fittest male, a man who is a leader, a provider. And if a man isn't living up to those standards, eventually his woman will leave him.
I'm a Christian, and I understand the order of God, and that order is God in Christ, Christ in man, man over woman, and woman over children. And it's a spiritual order. When you have that order, life works well for everybody, the entire family. But when the man is not there, or that order is reversed, where the woman is over the man, you're just going to catch hell. And so we've been fighting to bring that order back. In your, so are you a Christian?
Yes.
Oh, okay. In your book, you talk about the ID, the ego, and I'm sorry, the id, the ego, the super ego. What are those things?
Well, they're basically how the mind functions. It's an understanding of the mind. The id is your animal instincts. That's what you're born with. You're born with these basic innate drives, the drive for food, the drive to procreate, the drive to survive. And those drives were called pleasure principles because they're usually quite pleasurable, like reproducing, eating, all of those things bring you pleasure. Yeah. Then there's the ego. Now, the ego is your reality principle. It's what allows you to escape physical harm. So it reasons with the id. If the id is saying, I need food, I need food, I need food. Oh, we're going to
let me take a quick break, Mark. Mark, how can people get your book?
Well, you can go to www.thefallofwesternman.com. It's available there in hardback and paperback, but also as a free download. So if people just want to go and check out the book, they want to just read it and see if they like it first, you're welcome to download it for free. And if you like it, you can email it out to whoever you want, because that's what it's there for.
Just before the break, we were talking about the id, the ego. Explain that a little more and tell us how you can overcome that, if that's possible.
Yeah, well, we've done the id. The id is like your natural drives.
Right.
The ego is your reality. It's what keeps you, it interacts with the id, but it moderates the id for survival. So if the id is telling the psyche that it's hungry, it wants food, and you will go out looking for food. Well, if you see a tasty steak, it'll be eat it, eat it, eat it. But the ego will look around and make sure it's safe to eat it. And say there's a large dog guarding the steak, the id will be take the steak, take the steak. But the ego will say, no, no, no. If you take the steak, you're risking severe injury. So it will forgo pleasure to ensure that the individual doesn't come to harm. Then finally, there's the superego. Now, the superego is the learned part of the psyche. It's imparted to the individual, mainly by strong role models. And the superego is essentially morality, and it reasons with the id on a moral level. So if the id is saying, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, I'm hungry, and it sees a steak and says, right, go and get the steak, but the steak is belonging to a child. If a child's about to sit there and eat the steak, it will first consult the ego, and the ego will say, well, it's safe to take the steak. The child can't harm you. You can physically go and do that. But then the superego, the morality, will reason with the id and say, no, even though you want the steak, and even though you can take the steak, it is morally the wrong thing to do.
Right.
It is morally wrong to steal from another, to dominate another, to physically dominate somebody and take their possessions, regardless of the fact that you want or need those possessions. So that's the important thing. The superego is your morality. And the superego, importantly, is imparted to individuals by role models in the family unit, which, as we discussed earlier, is primarily for young men a strong disciplinarian in the form of a father figure, and also role models in society and on a national level, which are, again, meant to be people who are upstanding individuals who have good moral compasses. Now, what I state in my book is that the superego has been damaged, and also the id has been fed. So people are being told, enjoy yourself, enjoy yourself, enjoy yourself, but they have no morals anymore. There is no off button, because all of their heroes, all of their role models, people like Lady Gaga, these celebrities, all of the pop stars and rock stars and rap stars are telling them, do what makes you feel good. Do what makes you feel good. Just go out and enjoy yourself. And because of that, people have defective superegos, and their ids are reigning supreme. And when you live purely for pleasure and nothing else, essentially you just become like a debased animal who just seeks out pleasure without any moral thought of how that will impact you or others around you. And then you no longer have a society. You no longer have a community, and that's what's damaged us. And what we need is we need to regain our community consciousness. We need to regain our superego, our morality, and we need to put pleasure secondary. Pleasure shouldn't be the thing that we live for. We should live for morality. We should live for the good of our community. And when we form those communities with good moral bonds and moral rules, those communities function extremely well, and society and civilization moves forward.
I've noticed that with a lot of Christians, they don't know how to demonstrate morality, in a strong way with strength. And so what they have gone to is to be nice. You know, you have a lot of men who are nice men, and I say to them that niceness is weakness, but they don't see it as being weak, and it is weak because morality doesn't mean that you have to be nice. It means that you have to be right, but not nice.
I completely agree with that, and that's another thing that
you have a lot of noise in the background.
Yeah, sorry, somebody just walked through my office. When we were talking earlier about the emasculation of the male, that's another problem. Everyone today is told to be nice, not polite. You see, being polite and being nice are two completely different things.
Right.
You can be firm, you can be critical in a polite way, but you don't have to be nice with your criticism. Once you tell everyone that they constantly have to be nice, there is no discipline. There is no shame.
Yeah.
And shame's a very important thing.
Yeah.
You see, again, when we were young, men were shamed for being obese, for being unfit, for being not being manly. And women were shamed for behaving in a sluttish way.
Yes. Another break, Mark, let me take a quick one. Mark, what is a man?
Well, a man is obviously a male human being, but there's something deeper there, as we were saying. A man is someone who rises to a challenge. A man is someone who is moral. A man is someone who defends his community. A man is someone who is a strong father, a protector. A man is someone who doesn't let people down. A man is someone who always ensures that they act in a moral, polite, but firm way. They are things that defined the Western man. They are things that defined Western civilization. And sadly, I believe we have lost those virtues now due to a sustained attack by the media on our psyche.
Are you an alpha male or a beta male?
Oh, I think I'm an alpha male.
And what is love?
Well, I think love is something that's very, very important. And in my book, I talk about love. I talk about the fact that we as humans developed something that most other animals in the animal kingdom didn't. And that's these lasting life partnerships between man and woman that are based more on just sexual attraction. They are based on love, and they hold us together, they bind us, they ensure that the family unit survives, and they should ensure that you put both your family and your partner and your extended family, your community first. But unfortunately, love is something that has been twisted. It's something that's been co-opted. It's something that has been utterly taken over by the left. And now, instead of loving our families, instead of loving our partners, instead of loving our children or our community, we are told to love everything that actually seeks to harm us, everything that seeks to attack us.
Yeah.
So we are meant to show love towards those who actually seek to destroy the very things that we should love and that we should wish to protect.
I got to move a little faster now because of time. I read that you were arrested. First, let me ask this. So the way you are, the things you believe, is that due to being raised by a good father and mother?
I would say so, definitely. I mean, I'm a very moral person, and I believe in working hard for a living. I believe in supporting your friends and your family, and I believe in a moral and traditional society. And a lot of that is down to my parents.
You were close to your father?
Yes, I still am.
I read that you were arrested for hate speech. Is that true?
Yes, I was arrested on 8 counts of incitement to racial hatred. I was tried over a 2-year period, and I was found unanimously not guilty on every single one of those 8 counts. Now, the people who brought me to court were the British state, the police, left-wing groups, the BBC, and trade unions. Those 5 groups collaborated to try and bring me to court for speaking out against Muslim grooming gangs who were drugging and raping underage girls in towns in West Yorkshire.
And that's what they call hate speech because you were speaking out against that?
At political meetings, and the message of my meeting wasn't a message of hatred, it wasn't a message of violence, it was a message that highlighted the problems that had been created by these aggressive Muslim communities, and I called for people to vote in local elections for a political alternative. And what upset the local establishment is people were beginning to vote for parties outside of the mainstream parties because of the problems that were being created by aggressive Islamic communities that have settled in Britain but have imported their culture to the exclusion of our culture.
Amazing. Are you married, Mark?
No, I'm not married.
Are you date?
Well, I'll have to keep that one. That's have to be a big secret, that is.
So let me ask, on your website, David Duke is at the top of your, as an endorsement of your book.
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, I've been friends with David. I've known David for over a decade now. I actually came to one of the American Renaissance conferences in the US. I met him then, and I've been friends with him ever since. I appear on his radio show. David is someone who speaks about many of the things we are talking about today. He's a best-selling author. He's had 3 best-selling books. And obviously, he was elected to the House of Representatives in Louisiana. He's a man who's not only a very good friend.
I've had him on the show before.
He's a tireless political activist.
In 2002, you were in a BBC documentary, Young, Nazi, and Proud. And it was in 2005, you were charged with inciting racial hatred when you compared refugees to cockroaches.
Yes.
And I had a different impression of you before the show because I had the impression, how white young men are being called Nazi and all that. Why do you think that title has been attached to you?
Well, the title of Nazi is a very easy title to attach to anyone. And what you tend to find is that the left use these terms to justify violence and to strip people of their rights of freedom of speech and freedom of association. So at the moment, the left have been running a campaign of punch a Nazi, but they don't define what a Nazi is to them. A Nazi is anyone who has conservative viewpoints. So this essentially gives them, as they see it, a moral right to attack people like myself, even to attack people of color who agree with the things that I'm saying, and to strip people of their rights. And here in the UK, we are constantly battling for rights just to say what we think. I have never called for violence. I have never called for anything like that. I believe in political change.
One more final segment. When I come back, I want to ask you about the Great White Hope. You know who that is? Back in a moment. So, Mark, I have been called, black conservatives are called Uncle Tom, sellout, all kinds of names. They're under attack. And it sounds like that's what's happening to you as a result of standing up for values.
Exactly. This is what the left do. The left never like to actually debate. They don't like to talk about issues, and they certainly don't like to talk about facts. It's far easier for the left to attack us, to call us names, and to try and make our arguments look as if they lack legitimacy, not through defeating our arguments, but by throwing mud at us and hoping that some of it sticks.
Do you know who the Great White Hope is?
I believe you're referring to Donald Trump.
That's right. What's your? I think that Donald Trump is not only the Great White Hope of America, but of the world, because he's having such a positive impact around the world. What's your impression of the President Trump?
I supported Donald Trump. I still support Donald Trump. I think he's done many, many great things, but the greatest things he's done aren't actually political changes. Getting elected was fantastic, and some of the things he's brought in are also fantastic. Yeah. But he's done two things which I will forever be thankful to him for doing. Firstly, is he has shown that the media are not all powerful. He has put two fingers up to the media, and he has broken their grasp on the American people. For the first time in American history, Americans are voting outside of the choices that the media lay out for them. Yeah. That's phenomenal. And the second thing he's done, and for years, people like myself, you mentioned David Duke earlier, he's spoken about this for years. We've talked about the deep state and this conspiracy against the voting public. And we were called mad for it, we were ridiculed, but Donald Trump has finally exposed to the public that the deep state exists, and that when you elect a politician, that politician doesn't necessarily have power. That politician is still hamstrung and controlled by these shadowy forces who have embedded themselves within the political system and use their manipulative powers to actually control everything that goes on in government. And for those two things, I think Donald Trump has done more to spread the truth than anyone else.
I agree. Mark Collett, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to you. Be safe, and I wish you well, man.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
You too.